The true secret of great session prep isn't a framework for session prep at all. It's great campaign prep, which just so happens to be something that most people are pretty bad at most of the time. But that ends today. I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. Sorry about that. Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the show for dungeon masters who aren't afraid to TPK their party, even if it means a fight with their spouse. I'm your host, Justin Lewis, and together we're going to learn how to tell better stories for yourselves and your players as you play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a professional dungeon master, a podcast host for 3 years, lots of other things, but let's get into this. Before we get into today's show, I actually don't have a ton of time today, so I might cut this one halfway through and do the rest later, but I did want to talk about Creative Contraband. So there is a new test happening on the show. And every Monday, our friend Danny is going to put out a episode for the segment Creative Contraband, which essentially steals stuff from other genres or other methodologies or techniques or things, and then you kind of sneak them into D&D. So he's really smart, very well prepared, and this is just an opportunity for you to get extra content in the week. And it's a test, so if you like the content, you need to let us know, let Danny know, so that way he can keep doing it and he can stay on the show. We're really excited about this because on How to Be a Better DM, obviously we've had some changes over the last year, but this can allow us to give you better content and continue to give you more content, which might eventually put us in a place where we can do that with the normal episodes as well. So, uh, and to answer any questions, Tanner and I are not going anywhere. Danny will just do episodes on Mondays, and it'll just be an extra segment of the show. So let us know what you think about that. Okay, well, let's get into campaign planning. Campaign planning is essential, and the biggest issue most people have is the fact that they treat world building as campaign planning. The two are related, but not the same. So, first of all, when you are campaign planning, you need to think about your strengths and weaknesses. This is important because generally the best tactics are to increase your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. So amplify your strengths or focus on your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. And this is important for campaign planning because it will determine the type of game you play. If you find yourself struggling with combat, you're not very good at it, managing it and things like that, I wouldn't necessarily plan a war-based game, a game based on a war, because that will naturally have a lot of combat. On the flip side, if you struggle with role playing, I don't know if I'd do a social intrigue game because you would probably do a lot of role playing. So think about what you're good at and do more of that. Next, what are your preferences, right? So beyond what you're good at, what do you like to do? And this can involve some things that you're not very good at, but you should probably find a nice cross section of what you're good at and what you like to do, with some wiggle room to put in some things you want to work on because you do like to do those things, or you imagine you'd like to do those things if you are good at them, right? There's always room for practice, but in a large campaign, the major plot points shouldn't be, sorry about those plosives, by the way. The major plot points, should not be based on things that you don't like to do or things that you're just not good at, right? Like, because you're going to be spending most of the time on those things. Some examples are, let's see, well, with my own campaigns, I generally lean into storytelling, right, and role play. I do combat, but I think I'm not as good at combat as maybe other dungeon masters. And so with my games, I'm naturally allowing myself to do more role play rather than combat, right? I do combat, but I don't do as much. And I think that makes my games better. Obviously, I'm still working on combat or encounters because I don't like the word combat. But, anyways, you get the idea. Next one is you need to think of your time constraints. Obviously, you think of how much time you have available to use towards D&D yourself, how much time your party can use, but more than that, when do you envision the game ending? Because everything comes to an end. right? And if you don't envision the game ending, then how do you keep it from getting stale? Do you cycle through stories? Because even if you continue a 40-year-long campaign, it's not going to be the same story. Instead, you're going to cycle through different story arcs. So technically, those are campaigns within a campaign, and those smaller campaigns still require campaign prep. When I started my first campaign, I thought I'm going to do years-long campaign just like Critical Role. It's going to be awesome. And I gave no thought into how long I wanted the campaign. And as a result, there was no tempo. There was no feeling that things were pushing towards this inevitable end. I just sort of progressed as the story progressed, and I think many times it got too stale. So don't do that. Instead, set yourself a time limit. And obviously you can change that. With my current campaign, I said I want to do it in a year. That's what I want to do. A short campaign in a year. And we're about 6 months in, and they're nowhere even close to like getting the main quest. So one, that instructed me that, yeah, that wasn't realistic because we meet once a month. But two, with some of the story arcs I put in, I added in too much, right? And I'm going to talk about one of the story arcs in a second. But for anyone who's in any of my campaigns, these are going to have some pretty big spoilers coming up. So if you are in my campaigns, you might want to stop listening. Next one is you need to come up with your theme or your idea, whichever one comes first, and then build the other half with it. So in my case, I came up with the idea for my current campaign, the Treasure Planet campaign, first. I wanted to do a campaign in the universe of Treasure Planet 30 years after the events in the movie. I love that movie. It's a great movie. And for me, I was like, yeah, I know exactly the story, or at least the universe I wanted to do it in. But like I said, that's not campaign prep. That's just world building. So I then had to start doing some work in terms of what I want the story to be, right? And again, spoilers, but I decided I wanted my party to have to find Long John Silver, right? I wanted them to follow a map. I wanted them to feel the same way you would feel in the movie of Treasure Planet, but also feel the same way you'd feel in the movie of Pirates of the Caribbean. I wanted to mix those two together. And because of that, I started coming upon themes of possibly adventure, right? What does it feel like to explore, to be on the edge of a ship as it sails into the unknown, like that kind of a feeling. I've thought about maybe treasure could be that particular theme, but regardless, I've come up with the idea, and now I'm working on the theme. And when you have those two things, it instructs a lot of what you do. Because the way I view campaign planning, it's somewhat like a brand guide for a marketing endeavor. So if anyone who's in marketing, you know that before you do much, you try and come up with a brand guide so that way everything feels succinct and you can know what to tell yourself no to. And saying no to yourself is oftentimes more impactful than saying yes, and what you say no to will have a greater impact than what you say yes to, because naturally you're going to say no to a lot more things. So yeah, again, I came up with a theme, and then still working on it. But with my other campaign, Out of the Abyss, which is a Wizards of the Coast book, um, the game has some elements already set into it, but the theme was still somewhat ambiguous to me. So I kind of fell upon the idea of powerlessness, or having someone else control your fate. And uh, whether you let them, whether you go along with it, or whether you fight back, kind of a deal. And the madness elements kind of go along with that. And that's a really important part of the theme, is how does the theme and the story connect with your players? How does it interact with your players, which most of the time is mechanics, right? What mechanics make your players feel the theme, even if they don't cognitively recognize it? So in my case, I instituted these shackles that allow the party to transport to the surface, but when they're on the surface, the shackles will transport the party back to the Underdark a random number of days after, and consistently hope. The idea was it should make them feel like their destiny is not their own, and at a certain point, they should kind of rail against that. They should try and fight back. So that's number four. Number five is, what type of game is this? I think I'm actually going to leave it there, give you a nice taste for next time, because I want to spend a lot more time on that. What type of game is this? Because that's really important. But anyways, Thanks for listening to today's show. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and reach out to us on Instagram at How to Be a Better DM or send us an email. If you want to support us, there's links in the show notes, but the best way would be through sessionzerostudios.com/worldsmith. Sign up for a free trial of their TTRPG generators. They're awesome guys, great to work with. We just love them. I try to do stuff for them for free, honestly, because I like what they do. Um, but sign up there, and if you ever need anything, go ahead and reach out to us. We'd love to help you with D&D stuff. We'll be back next time with another handcrafted episode just for you. Sorry for the dogs, but thanks for listening, and until next time, let's go ahead and roll initiative.